Hey there, guys. A few of you have asked me to do some budget clears on the final bosses of Dark Visions 21. In this video, instead of doing the actual budget clear, which means I would just like randomly pick some units and go in there and just rerun them, I'm going to instead just briefly talk about the bosses and suggest some recommended units for you to build your own team to get a clear in for these guys. So the sub-bosses, the dragon and the bird, they have a 20 billion damage cap, which is possible to hit, but it needs exceptionally powerful teams to get that. If you don't have like the best of the best of the best units and gear, don't really worry about the damage cap. Just hit it as hard as you can, do the best you can, especially for like a budget guide. Don't worry about capping it, just do the best you can. So on screen right now is a brief overview of the AI for the dragon and the dark bird. So the dragon, for the most part, is really easy. You want a provoker with water immunity. On turns, you can see 2 and 4. He does AoE physical water. You can either mirage it or resist it. There's also some AoE fixed water and AoE magic water. You're going to want to, again, probably just resist it is the best place. The boss does not water imperil, so 100% water resist, either from gear or buff, is all you need. Single target charm and AoE poison, so you're going to want some status immunity to deal with those on your provoker, and then poison immunity for your party. And then notice the little note here I put. When the boss is below 50% health, he starts using non-elemental magic, also berserk. So just don't push the boss to the threshold at all and just kill him from above 50%. Now for the Dark Bird, he uses single target physical wind, as well as some non-elemental physical single target. So this is an evade provoker, handles that. AoE physical wind, you can either resist it or mirage it. On turn 5, the boss uses a single target unresistible death for the Dark Bird. This has an RNG chance to just fail and not kill your unit, but that's completely RNG. So you can either kill the boss by turn 5 and ignore this, or you can push him below 50% health. Below half health, the bird will not use death. So if you're using like Angela and need to go for a really long clear, you probably want to push the boss below 50% for that. So that's pretty much, these two bosses are really easy to build a team to just sustain and survive for a long time. In this video, we're not really going to cover Dark Odin. We're just going to cover the two sub-bosses. I'll probably do a Dark Odin video a little bit later to go over the basics. But here is the, overview AI of the dragon and the bird. And some units to talk about for these bosses. The Darkwing Dragon is a physical fight. It's a dragon, obviously. It's weak to water or wind, so you can use either of those teams. So when you're building a team, you want to first of all, with Dark Visions, pick your breaker. So over here on the left, we've got a list of some of the good breakers for defense. Laura, Hawk, Venera, and Locke all have the good 90% break. I've arranged them in like sort of descending order of value. Obviously, Laura Croft can do a ton of cap damage. Hawkeye can do a little bit of damage. Venera and Locke do 0 damage, but they do have a 90 break. Cacteria is an 89% break. Again, she does basically 0 damage, but she has a good break. Laguna and Frievia are only 88% breaks, but they can be serviceable, and they can both contribute a little bit of damage, not much, but certainly, they can do something. And if you don't have anyone up here, they're probably worth bringing. And honestly, Laguna and Frievia might even be better than Cacteria just because they can contribute a lot of, well, not a lot, but some personal damage, as opposed to Cacteria contributing none. So just pick a good breaker from the party, and then an amplify. So you want to decide if you're going water team or wind team. So if you're going with a water team, Lord of the Seas, Nicole, I should have put EX3 here. EX3 Yoshikiri can do 45% water amplify for the party. Tiana can do a 30%, which is like, pretty low, but there's really not a lot of options for AoE water amplify. So there you go. If you don't have these, you might want to go with the wind team. Mermaid Frisia, Bulwark, again 30% from Tiana or 45% from Bart. I should have put Bart Tire because he's actually 45% amplify. But yeah, there's some options for Amplify. And if you can fit it, you could also use like a field. For example, Ferris can do a water field, which may or may not be worth using depending on your party. Then you're going to grab a killer buffer for your party. So like, again, Roberta, General Celeste, EX3, Last Gen. Those are the 150% buffers, or 160 for Celeste. Celeste at EX2 or below is only 100% buff, and Eurasia is 100% buff. You could also do something like a 200% buffer with like Duke and then steal it with Zahn. But at that point, you're using 2 party slots, and depending on your strategy, that might not be worth it. But it is an option if you've got no other good buffer. And after that, you want to fill the rest of the party with just damage dealers. So here's a list of some of the good damage dealers that are either non-elemental and can be imbued, or they are proper element innately. So, you know, Esther, Graf are non-elemental. You can imbue them. Same thing with Roberta. Auron is naturally wind element. It lines up with the dragon. Tifa is naturally water element. Titus and Squall can be imbued. They're still pretty good, even Neovision's Awakening. And then Sky's Jump is actually pretty decent. It's not super meta, but you know, it's good. And you can do that as a jump as well with the wind element. And then there's also some units that are good off element. Now these are units that are locked to the wrong element, but because their damage is so high, just naturally, even if you just mix elements on them, it can still potentially be worth bringing. So Knights of Granshout, Kain, Tyvis, and Sephiroth, you know, some of the other good options, depending on your party. You usually want to stick to the elemental, the proper element if possible. But like Kain and Knights of Granshout especially, their damage is so exceptionally high. It's usually worth bringing them even off element because you can proper imbue them. So there's some options for the Dark Winged Dragon. If you've got, you know, none of these on the list, then just, you know, bring the best you can, and you know, hopefully you can pull a better unit for next month. And then the bird. The bird is a lot trickier because it's a magical fight, and you kind of have to use mages because the boss has exceptionally high defense, to where physical units are just not worth bringing, period. So the bird is weak to fire or dark. And unlike physical, most of the mages cannot be imbued, so you preferably don't want to mix element teams on the bird. Something like Dark Rain would be worth bringing to a fire party, even off element, but because his damage is just so high. But for the most part, because of that Dark Vision's party slot, you want to stick to one element usually. And then for the breakers for the bird, Louise is probably the best breaker, period, because she's a 90% breaker. Plus she has, you know, some support stuff, and she can chip in a little bit of damage. If you don't have Louise, well, Savior can do 0 damage while still doing a 90% break. And again, Cacteria has that 89. And then just like up here, down here, we've got Frievia and Kryla that are an 88% breakers. Now, this one's a little bit unusual, to where because the magical fight is so crazy, you want to try to fit in as much damage as possible. So it might, depending on your party, be worth, like, for example, dropping one of the 90 breakers and bringing something like Kryla or Frievia, because Frievia can chip in a little bit of damage, and then Kryla can do an amplify while breaking. It might be good for slot efficiency. Both of these have 88% breaks. And for the amplify, some good dark amplifies are Kryla. She has the 45 single target, only at EX3. Again, I forgot to mark that. That's EX3 Kryla only. If you don't have EX3, then she can't do that. Bulwark, Olivera, and Yigni can all do a 30% party dark amplify. And there might be others as well that I didn't think of and I didn't put on this list, but these are just some examples, not like the total definitive list. And if you go to Fire Team, Roberta and Lefty have 45% fire amps. And actually, I'm just thinking of it, if you crowned your Rain, he has a 55% amplify. Might be worth it. And then Aerith has a 30% amp, which is a little bit lowish, but she does have, you know, the 400% stat buffs and all that, so it might be worth using. And then Bird Killers, the Return Fina has, at EX3, has a 160 Bird Killer. Bulwark and Zidane have a 150 Bird Killer for the party. And then General Celeste has a 100% at EX1 or above. And then for your damage dealers, the two big, huge MVPs on this fight are Angela and Dark Rain. And I'm pretty sure anyone that is perfect scoring this boss requires both of these. If you don't have either one of these, you're probably not going to perfect score the bird. So, don't stress out about it. I can't do it. It's not really that big a deal, but yeah. So these, for a dark team, here's some of the good options. Yeah, mages are just bad in this game for the most part. There's not a lot of options. Like, the power level after Angela and Dark Reign, like going down to Rinoa, just drops off a cliff. Like, Rinoa does way less damage than the top two. And then from there, it goes even further down. Like Frievia, Roberta, Oliveira, Ibarra. Like, these are just like, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel to find some dark mages, because just mage damage in this game is unfortunate. And if you go with a fire team, it's kind of even worse. Angela is obviously the best. You would have to imbue Angela with the dark team, but that's, Bulwark, etc. can do that. And then, Frievia, Roberta, Terra, Slime, Tiana, Igni, like, mage damage is very, very tricky. So just do the best you can. I promise you, a lot of players are struggling with the bird. It's not, it's definitely not a thing we can really deal with if you don't have the top units like Angela and Dark Reign. It's just, not a lot of options for the bird. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch that. So just build a party, grab a breaker, grab an amplify, grab a killer, and then grab some damage dealers. Hopefully you can, combine some of these roles. Like, for example, on this one, you could use Kryla to handle both of these, or Bulwark can be your killer plus your amplifier, etc. Makes it nice, convenient. Like for the dragon, Roberta can be both your killer and a really good damage dealer. So mix and match, get it in there, and hopefully this helps. And I'll probably talk about Dark Odin in a future video. See you next time.